These three questions determine 99% of your success in chess. Very simple, yet absolutely incredibly powerful method to win in chess. First of all, we need to start with the solid opening. We need to bring all of our pieces into the game. I recommend the call it Zuckertor system for that. And once we are done, once we are ready for the fight, then we can start asking those three questions. But actually, we can already start doing it now. So first of all, you always have to ask whenever your opponent makes a move, what is the threat? What kind of ideas your opponent has? Or in general, what is the idea? I call it the wow system. What opponent wants. So here you ask whether there is a threat to take here on d4 or maybe to play c4, because the move I want to make, the next step of the call it Zuckertor system, this insanely powerful opening, is to play bishop d3, but a lot of people are afraid of c4. It's not a big deal, we can still step back to e2 and then attack it, but we can also start with the move b3. So that is how you acknowledge what your opponent's idea is, and then what you should do, not always to stop your opponent's move at all costs, but instead think what kind of opportunities you have and how can you combine doing something useful for yourself with stopping your opponent's idea. Because I want to place this move this bishop on b2. This is one of the key ideas of the call it Zuckertor system. That is why b3 move is very useful for me, but at the same time it stops my opponent's idea. Then I can freely play this move bishop to d3. Okay, he plays bishop to g4. By the way, this is a pretty solid setup for black. Now the d4 pawn is hanging, so I have to play this move bishop b2 to defend it, not to lose the pawn. And then I want just to castle. Yes, now I think I'm totally fine with that. He plays bishop d6. I can... Yeah, the problem is that I cannot play my move knight to e5 that easily. That is normally the idea. So I'm going to start with knight d2, defend that second guy, the second brother, basically, of this knight here on f3, and then I'm ready to play h3, so that if he takes, I'm going to take it back with the knight. Then maybe I'm even thinking about playing g4, because this knight to e5 idea is so essential. But instead he plays queen c7, which is another smart move. This is something we never got in this playlist. I have an entire playlist about call it Zuckertor system. Very, very powerful. Please take a look so you know how to handle all possible variations. But this particular line, I think nobody played yet. So we need to know how to handle it. Again, remember that first question that you always ask yourself. Now we are coming to this late opening early middle game where this method of three questions works best for you. So the first one, what is your opponent's idea? And one of them, this queen c7, yes, it was obvious it's attacking the h2 pawn, but also it's working this way, and our opponent wants to take and play knight to b4, attacking our bishop and our knight. In general, in this opening, a3 is a very useful move whenever there is a knight on c6, but especially in this case, that would be very interesting. But again, it's not everything. You always have to think about all of the possibilities for your opponent. There is the move e5 that is also very interesting for the opponent, because that threatens e4. That is very, very annoying. So maybe I should take here on c5. That would open up my bishop, trying to take advantage of the fact that he played it this way. And then e5 would be more difficult for him to play, because the bishop would not be there anymore. Or maybe I even combine both ideas. I play a3, and if he plays e5, then I'm in time to take and play the move e4. Yes, I like it the most. So remember that first question, we have discussed it. Then the second question, do you have any active opportunities? And here what helps you is the so-called CCT system, checks, captures, and threats. Because if you have really active opportunities, really cool ones, the chances are that it's going to be either a check or a capture or a threat. So I have considered that, and then I'm coming to this move a3, which is again a multi-purpose move, because on the one hand, it's stopping my opponent's idea here, very powerful one. I don't want to allow this exchange. But on the other hand, it prepares some ideas of my own, because now I have this idea d takes c and b4, trying to create some pressure against my opponent. Of course, very often it depends where your opponent is gonna castle, whether his king is there or there, so that you understand you need to go all in here, or typically if they castle here, then we try to checkmate them over there. For example, takes and bishop takes f6 would make more sense as the king would be there opened up. So let's see what he chooses, or maybe he plays e5, leaving his king in the center, but that is also a little bit dangerous. And again, my idea is, yes, he goes for that. My idea is to take on c5, and then either immediately or after the move b4, play this move e4. Remember, we always and always, especially when we are playing as white, we want to fight for the center. I do think I want to play e4 immediately, because if I play b4, I have to calculate like so many different lines, like e4. This is a good practical tip. If this move is good, probably the difference is not that huge if I play b4 right now or not, but it saves me so much time that I might need later on. And later on, the difference between the correct move or incorrect one, where it's getting so sharp, it's going to be much bigger than here between the moves e4 and b4, which are both strategically important for me. But the most important thing, again, I stop my opponent's very active idea, and at the same time I do something very useful for myself. All right, so we have so far two questions. What is my opponent's idea? Do I have any active opportunities? The third question, if the first two are like not a problem, your opponent doesn't really have any dangerous threats and you don't have any active opportunities, what are you going to do? Because this happens so often in your chess, and then you spoil a very good position because you don't know what to do. Ask yourself the third question: what is my worst placed piece? This is how very strong chess players figure out what to do when everyone else doesn't know what to do. You ask yourself, what is your worst placed piece? Basically, you can do that immediately in the opening, because in this case, all of the pieces that are still not developed, those would be the worst ones. But later on in the middle game and even in the end game, where obviously normally all of the pieces are already developed, you still ask yourself that question, because maybe one or even a few of your pieces are really not optimally placed, and then you're looking for a way to make it better. They say, you don't know what to do, improve your pieces. This is a very good practical tip, so you don't get lost and you don't lose a lot of time, because this is what happens with so many players. The majority of my students, people under 2000, why they lose their games, because at some point they just don't know what to do. They don't have this plan. By the way, let's talk about this very important question of how do you figure out the middle game plan. Of course, these three questions, they help you a lot, they guide your mindset, but you also should have a general strategic idea, especially in the middle game. And here, as long as my opponent's king is still not castled, it's still in the center, and he's so active in the center, I want to fight. So we both are basically fighting for the center here. Yes, my opponent has a choice. He might shut down the entire center or open it up like that, and that tremendously like plays a role in terms of what's going to happen. And here, as the center is opened, that means you should play as little as possible with your pawns. It doesn't matter that much to move your pawns, but to activate your pieces as much as possible. That is what matters mostly in the open position. All right, he plays knight to d4. Thank God I have this bishop on e4, otherwise this huge pin would be very, very annoying. Actually, that might be an exception where g4 might be interesting, although this is a move you should be careful with. First of all, I now want to make this move b4. Remember earlier, I said it's strategically a very good idea because I asked this guy a question: do you want to go here or here? If you go here, then your knight is not very well protected. I might even just take it and win a pawn. But if you go here, then you don't help along this diagonal, which is also good for me. And I can think more in terms of how do I continue. And in general, just get more space. That is always pretty useful. All right, he goes there. Then I have this idea of playing the move c3. By the way, at some point even queen a4 check, if he like goes away with the knight, would be possible. But if we just exchange everything, then maybe I don't really have any advantage. He's gonna castle and the attack is not that great. Maybe g4, bishop g6. That is, yeah, pretty risky. Although, I have an idea. G4, bishop G6, knight takes D4. If he takes, I have this move knight b5, threatening to take the queen, and knight d6 check, threatening to win the bishop. That feels very strong, and also opening up this guy. Notice if he takes here on f3, intermezzo, I take back with the queen, threatening to take there, checks. I mean, this is not great for him. So bishop g6, I take. If he takes back, then I take it. He takes again, I just win a pawn, so he has to take there. But then I have this idea of rook e1 and like creating a lot of problems. Remember, his king is still in the center. This is one of the most important tips you should take away. How do you figure out a strategic plan? Well, you think about your opponent's strengths, vice versa, your strengths and your opponent's weaknesses. And ideally, you should combine both of those things to figure out the right plan. And I think this move g4 is incredibly powerful. You might be scared, like, oh my god, I'm opening up the king. Well, that matters only if your opponent is able to use that to his advantage. If you give him like 5 moves here, he will transpose the knight to f4, and that would be really powerful. Although, again, he needs to care about his weaknesses as well. But the point is, I'm the first one to create those problems. Remember all of the ideas I have in mind. That is very dangerous. So my opponent doesn't have time to create those problems for me, as he's going to be busy with handling those threats I'm creating for him. In such a situation, the fact that I'm opening up the king is not that important. I'm the one attacking, his king is more vulnerable, and if I need that move to make my attack possible, so be it. Don't be afraid of opening up your king if your opponent is not able to attack it, if your attack is more powerful. Yes, now I'm gonna play this move knight xd4, because I have calculated it beforehand. This knight b5 move is very annoying after bishop b4. He can even grab this pawn, but I think, to say the least, I'm gonna be able to take that pawn back, but I don't think he's gonna survive this entire pressure. I can just take on a4, rook e1, like his king is so miserable there. And the position is very open. It's super scary to have your king that open in the center, but if the position is closed, at least it's not that simple for your opponent to use it. But if the center is opened and your opponent's king is in the center, then it's a dream for you. But for you, it's so essential to use it right now. You just give one tempo to your opponent, he's gonna castle, and then he's gonna have a fantastic position. The king is super safe. So it's important to use your momentum, this exact moment in the game, to create those horrible, horrible threats for your opponent. And then, well, good luck handling with all of those threats. Yes, he's going for it. We are going to see these absolutely crazy variations. Important is that he doesn't have any checks. That is one thing to take a look at. If he doesn't have any checks, then we are good to go, because we are going to be the first one to create those problems. Yes, you might argue he can play queen c6 and trying to create those checkmating ideas, but all of that is too slow. I'm the first one. I'm gonna give that check. I'm gonna take this bishop, and that would be all she wrote. Once my rook comes to e5 with the check, good luck to my opponent. But he doesn't have any way to stop it. The maximum he can get is win that pawn, but it's not about the pawns. It's so important to understand. For example, most of my students, members of the academy where I give you personalized feedback on your games, I analyze those and I notice you put so much attention to the material things. Those pawns, they don't matter if you are talking about delivering a checkmate, right? They are not going to save you. It's all about the threats. It's all about creating those problems for the opponent. And if you're going to survive till the late endgame, then yes, then it would be important. Okay, so I wanted just to take there, and once he takes back to play rook e1, he's smart, although, to play king to f8, but yeah, queen d6 check would be possible. I think maybe he wants to take here, but then again, this knight is so powerful. No, I'm gonna do that. Let him decide which one of the pieces he wants to take, because both of them are extremely active. If he takes there, then this knight in the center always going to be able to create a lot of threats. And if he takes this one, then this bishop is also extremely powerful. So either way, I don't envy my opponent. The most horrible thing for him, he basically plays a rook down. Remember, it doesn't matter how many pieces you have on the board. It matters how many active pieces you have, how many of those pieces actually play. That is why I always say it's so important to develop your stuff. Because if you have your rook there, nobody cares as long as it's not participating actively. Okay, he decided to leave me with the knight. Maybe it's a better choice. At least he doesn't lose that pawn. He's not suffering for free, he's suffering for an extra pawn. Yet, still queen d6, I think I should play it, because yeah, he's coming with the rook anyway. And maybe just rook d1, talking about development, that brings another piece into the game that stops the move rook d8, because I'm gonna just take everything. And all of the threats are still there. Again, we don't care about those pawns. Although the bad thing is that he would be able to create some threats and get to my king, but maybe even rook d3 would solve all of those problems. I like it. And of course, I want to bring this rook so that this one is still helpful for me to defend that pawn. Maybe the only problem I have. And also the d4 square is covered. Like, this rook is very good along the open file. Remember, rooks love open files. The simplest idea I have here is just to play queen e7 and rook d7 and create those threats. So yes, if I just wait a lot of time, I'm deadly lost. I have a lot of material disadvantage, like 2 pawns potentially here, but I want to give a checkmate to my opponent before the material matters. Yeah, he tries to make his castles by hand, but hopefully he's not going to be in time. Because I'm gonna play queen e7, and if he goes away, first of all, I'm just taking that pawn, threatening checkmate in one. Very important. It's not about the pawn, it's about those threats against the key. Maybe his idea is to play rook f8 and then king h7, but I hope that I'm going to be able to create enough threats against him. Maybe queen d7 was also an interesting idea, because queen on e7 is a little bit clumsy. Like, this way I would always have checks. Yes, exactly. And this way he wants to hide there, and then it's not that easy for me to continue the attack. Yeah, maybe queen d7 was better. It's all about the threats. I have to create new threats for my opponent. Rook d3 is an interesting move just to stabilize everything and bring my rook over here. Feels a little bit slow, but maybe my opponent doesn't have enough time. Like, he still plays without the rook no matter what. And once my rook is on f3, I can use my second rook to be developed, as the f2 pawn will be protected. One thing I don't like, some moves like queen e2 that would attack all of those pieces. That's quite annoying. So yeah, so it was better. After queen d7, I could have just played queen to f5 right now, and then g6 is always very risky. King h7 is absolutely impossible. All right, let's think. How do we win here? I feel like I have tremendous initiative that must give me the win here. But I have to create threats to achieve that. Maybe I just relocate my knight. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it. Because if the knight goes somewhere to f5, or maybe even h5, that would be a nightmare for my opponent. Rook d7, king h7, knight d6. I threaten to take the pawn, cannot play f6. Like, cannot even defend that pawn. I like this plan. So I ignore, again, all of the material. Maybe after takes, I even have the move king g2. Because this one, it's not about really the pawn, it's about the fact that he's gonna get to my king and create those checks, and that is annoying. Yeah, so maybe king g2 solves those problems. Because, like, otherwise this queen is pretty annoying. Queen f3, queen h3, and this way I cover everything, and I don't see how this queen can come back to the game, at least not that easily. Maybe via b3. But also at some point I can just grab this pawn on a5, because again, not only the pawn itself, that is a nice bonus, but mainly this queen will be very active, preparing some knight f6 ideas, who knows. The main advantage still that I have is that this rook is not participating in the game. My rook, however, is also not that great. It's like helpful in the defense, but ideally I would be happy to use it in the attack. Right now I don't see a good way. Something like that maybe. Yeah, if you imagine this rook just jumps from f1 to f3, the game is immediately over. But unfortunately, the rules of chess do not allow that. For the opponent, it's also hard. Like, yes, you can be all day happy about the fact that you have so many extra pawns, but the threats are coming. It's very inconvenient. Rook h7, but like, look at how horrible this rook is. And you can never still push the g pawn because of this knight coming. But his argument is that he's protecting something. I'm not even sure what he wants to protect. Maybe he wants to protect this g7 pawn so the f pawn can move. That is the idea. And if I take here, maybe he wants to take over here. All right, maybe it's time for me to start that maneuver. Maybe bishop d4 is his plan. Wait, bishop d4, I have rook d8. Enough is enough. That would be a checkmate. And otherwise, I want to, to make that possible, my initial idea. Because even if you play f6, like, this is so horrible. All of those pieces are so passive. All I need is basically relocate my knight to f5, and then you're not going to survive. Also, the knight is really great in this type of situation because all of the main actions are happening on this side of the board, where the knight is very strong, it's flexible, it's in the center controlling a lot of squares. Whereas this bishop cannot really help my opponent to defend. Wait, is rook d8 winning here? I thought about it even before he made his move. But exactly because he played that move, rook to h7, his king does not have an escape square, and this rook is not protected and cannot be protected. Because otherwise my opponent wants to play queen e6, right? He's gonna be able to deal with all of the problems. And subconsciously, even if I don't say it every single time, but I use those three questions that are the main topic of this video. For example, here, the question that will help you so much is what is your worst placed piece? That is definitely this rook on f1. But right now, it's going to be the main piece in my attack. For example, rook d8, he takes, and now this rook would help me to just deliver a checkmate. But again, always think what is your opponent's idea. I think that is this queen e6 move. That is why I have to be active. I never want to allow my opponent to exchange the queens. That would shut down my entire attack. So now I'm thinking, what are my most active opportunities? Checks, captures, and threats. I don't have any checks except for those, but that does not work. Then captures, well, rook b7, we don't care about pawns. And rook d8 is a threat. Huge threat, checkmate in one. So you see here how you combine all of the questions into one strategy and how it wins you games. But before making the move, I want to think what kind of opportunities my opponent has. So queen is7, like, yeah, takes is the most active one. I take it back. How can he escape the checkmate? I think this is just not possible. f2 pawn, of course, very important to check. But thank God our knight on e4 is very good both in terms of the attack and in terms of the defense. So I think rook d8 just wins the game. Or at least it wins that rook, like after takes and takes, if he can figure out a way to save his king. But I don't think he can. This is the problem. Like, his king is not able to disappear. He can go back rook h8 to create that square on h7 for the king, but then he's going to lose all of his rooks, and that would be an extra knight for me in that. And my attack would obviously continue. But maybe that's the best chance for him to take it and then play rook h8. At least to immediately avoid the checkmate. So you see how you are rewarded for this strategy of, first of all, playing as active as possible, always fighting for the initiative. We don't play pawns, we play chess, and the goal in chess is to deliver a checkmate. All of the pieces you have, especially all the pawns you have, just a resource for you to achieve your goal. And also you see how these three simple questions, if you ask it every single time, either literally asking yourself that or subconsciously as I do it, because it's not like every single time I literally think about that, but subconsciously those questions are always and always on my agenda. You might have noticed on my ideas how I think about those questions. And yeah, now my opponent just resigns because it's a checkmate. So I hope this strategy would help you. It was instructive, and now you can use it in every single one of your games. In this playlist, you will learn everything you need to know about this College Secret system to beat everyone under 2000 ELO.